Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We welcome to Online Teaching Academy Ekalaiva. In the last class we have studied about androecium. Now we will look into the innermost part of the whorl, that is the innermost whorl of the flower, what we call it as gynoecium. Now we all know that the gynoecium is the female reproductive part of the flower, and it is made up of either one or more carpels. So, what does the carpel consist of? The carpel consists of stigma, the style and the ovary. We all know that the ovary is the enlarged part of the carpel and it is a basal part on which we will find an elongated tube. This we call it as a style, and on the top we will find the stigma, which is the receptive of the pollen. So, a carpel is nothing but which is having a basal part and an elongated tube, the style, and this style connects the ovary to the stigma, and the stigma is nothing but the receptive surface for the pollen grain. Now, each ovary will bear either one ovule that is attached to a flattened cushion like structure, what we call it as a placenta, and if it has more than one carpel, either it may be free or united. If it is free, which you can see in lotus and rose, then you call it as apocarpus, we will call it as. If they are fused, we call it as syncarpus, which we can see in mustard and tomato. So, the carpels may be free, apocarpus. If they are united, you call it as syncarpus. Now, we all know that after fertilization, the ovary develops into a fruit and the ovule becomes into a seed. Now, these ovules are attached in the ovary, and that arrangement of these ovules on the ovary is only what we call it as placentation, we will call it as. So, the arrangement of ovules within the ovary is only what we call it as placentation, and there are various types of arrangement, and these are called with terms known as marginal, parietal, axial, free central and basal placentation. You can see in this picture, this is the marginal placentation where you will find the ridge which has been formed, and on this you will find the ovules are being born, which we can find in P. And this placentation, you call it as, this placentation is called as marginal placentation. This is marginal, and here you can see that this is the ovary, and here you will find it is locules which are there, chambers are there, and here you will find at the center you will find the ovules are attached, and this kind of placentation we call it as axial placentation, we will call it as axial placentation. And this picture you can see here, the ovules are there at the periphery of the wall of the ovary, inner wall of the ovary. So, then you call this as parietal placentation, you will call it as parietal. Here this axial placentation we will see in China rose. Marginal we said we will see in peas. Here you will find in China rose, and this parietal placentation you will find in cucumber, that it is present, the ovules are attached at the periphery on the inner wall of the ovary, and here you will find it as single chambered, and sometimes there may be a septa may be formed dividing into two chambers. Sometimes it may, but here it is, there is no septum. Now, this kind of placentation is what we call it as free central we will call it as. Here you don't find any septa and it is only one chambered, and you can find that the ovules are there at the center, so you call it as free central. And this is the last kind of placentation, what we call it as basal placentation. Here you will find at the base of the ovary, the ovule is attached, only one ovule is been attached, so you call this kind of placentation as basal placentation. Now you can see here in marginal placentation, the placenta forms a ridge along the ventral suture of the ovary, and the ovules are borne on this ridge forming two rows, which we can find in Ps. And when the placenta is axile and the ovules are attached in a multilocular ovary, then the placentation is said to be axile, and which we can find in China rose, tomato and lemon. And in parietal placentation, the ovules develop on the inner wall of the ovary, but they are there at the peripheral end, peripheral part. And either the ovary may be one chambered, but sometimes it may become two chambered due to formation of a false septa. A septa has been formed. Septa is nothing but a wall if it is developed. Then you will, which you can find in mustard and argument. And when the ovules are borne on the central axis, and if the septa is absent, then you will call it as free central, which you will find in prime rows. And if the ovules in basal placentation, we will find that the placenta develops at the base of the ovary, and only a single ovule if it is attached, which we will see in sunflower and marigold. We call such kind of placentation as basal placentation. Now, we said after the fertilization, the ovary develops into a fruit and the ovule becomes into a seed. Now, this fruit is nothing but it is a product of pollination and fertilization. We said after the pollination, the pollen is being transferred onto the stigma, and this pollen develops the pollen tube, fuses with the egg, that is double fertilization takes place, and after that the ovary becomes into a fruit and the ovule become a seed. So it is the product of pollination and fertilization, and what do it contains inside? It contains the seeds. Now, when you say the fruit, the structure of the fruit, if you see that the fruit is having a wall, that you call it as a fruit wall, and that is otherwise called as pericarp. The fruit wall is otherwise called as pericarp. And this pericarp, you can see that it is differentiated into an outer layer, what we call it as an epicarp, the middle layer which we call it as a mesocarp, and the inner layer which we call it as a endocarp. Now, sometimes you will find that these layers are being differentiated, you can see differentiately, but sometimes they are all fused. And when you talk about the fruits, what are the types of fruits? Fruits can be classified into three types. What you call it as a true fruit, false fruit and parthenocarpic fruits. Now, what is a true fruit? If the ovary is developing into a fruit without any non-carpillary part, we said a carpel is what? The one which is having the ovary, the style and the stigma. If a fruit is developing into a fruit without any non-carpillary part, then we call it as a true fruit, which you will find in tomato and mango. And the false fruits are, the word itself tells false. If it is other than the carpel, if the fruit has been developed by any other part, then you call it as a false fruit. So here, in addition to the ovary, the non-carpillary part, what is a non-carpillary part? Either it may be a thalamus or perianth if it develops, then you call it as a false fruit. Here, if the thalamus has been developed, we can find in apple, or the perianth is the one which we eat, the edible portion of it in jackfruit, or involucre and perianth if it has been formed into a fruit, which we will find in walnut. All such kind of fruits are called as false fruits. If a fruit is being developed without fertilization, then you call it as parthenocarpic fruits, and they are seedless fruits. Okay, this is the classification of fruits. But when we talk about the fruit, here we can call them as fleshy fruits. And here the word tells what is a fleshy fruit depending upon the pericarp, the nature of the pericarp. Either it may be a fleshy fruits or it may be a dry fruits. The fleshy fruits are the fruits which are derived from a single pistil where the pericarp is fleshy, succulent, and you can see that it is differentiated into epicarp, mesocarp and endocarp. In this we can find various types. We will see the picture, children. Berry, one example which you will find in tomato, grapes and brinjal. Here the fruit develops from bicarpellary. We all know that what is bicarpellary. Bicarpal means two carpels. If it is more than that, you call it as multicarpellary. Syncarpous, if the carpels have been fused, then you call it as a syncarpous. And here the epicarp is syn, the mesocarp and the endocarp remain undifferentiated. In tomato you will find that outer, if you soak it in hot water, you can see that you can peel off the outer wall, but the inner part will become juicy. That is what we find in berry. So they form a pulp in which the seeds are embedded. Drupe, this you can see in mango. Here you will find that the pericarp is differentiated into outer skinny epicarp, fleshy and pulpy mesocarp, and inside you will find a hard and stony endocarp. So this we can see in drupe, example mango. So you can find. Then the next one is what we call it as pepo. Here the fruit is developed from tricarpellary inferior ovary, and here in pepo, that is the cucumber and watermelon, you will find that the pericarp turns into leathery or woody, which encloses fleshy mesocarp and smooth endocarp, which you will find in pepo. Cucumber, what we eat, is a type of fruit, what we call it as a pepo. And Hesperidium, orange is an example. In this, you will find that the fruit wall is differentiated into outer wall. You will find that it is leathery, and we all know that whenever we peel that, we get that fragrance. It is nothing but because it has the oil glands. And inner side you will find a middle fibrous mesocarp you will find, and we cannot distinct endocarp, but the endocarp forms distinct chambers. You can find many chambers are there, and all will contain the juicy hairs. So in lemon and orange we can find this kind of fruit, what we call it as a Hesperidium, having a leathery epicarp, and then the endocarp forms the distinct chambers. And pome, here you will find that the receptacle. Pome example is what? Apple. We will find in pome, the part which we eat is nothing but the thalamus. The thalamus is the fleshy part which we eat. So you will find it is in pome, the epicarp is thin skin, and the endocarp is nothing but the cartilaginous structure, what we is an edible part. And the last one is what we call it as baluster, which you will find in pomegranate. Here you will find that the pericarp is tough, the outer wall is very tough and leathery, and the seeds are attached irregularly. You will find that with the testa being the edible portion. The testa is the part which we eat. So we will find in pomegranate. So if the pericarp is fleshy, we call it as a fleshy fruits. If the pericarp is dry, then you call them as dry fruits. In this we have, depending upon they split open. You find either they split open or they don't split. We call dry dehiscent, dry indehiscent, and a combination of this two you call it as a schizocarpic, we call it as. So here in dry fruits we will see only some examples very quickly, children. Here we will say the pericarp is dry and not differentiated into, we cannot find differentiation like epicarp, mesocarp and endocarp. In this we said dry dehiscent. Here the pericarp is dry, and what will happen, this pericarp will split open along the sutures to liberate the seeds. So here you will find some examples like follicle, you will find in Calotropis, legume, the pod, you all would have seen the legumes, Pisum sativum, and siliqua you will find in capsula, and here capsule you will find in, divided into here again in septicidal, you will call it as aristolacia, and then or it may be loculicidal. So these are the types of fruits. This is the follicle, legume, then you will find this loculicidal capsule, Abilmoschus esculentus, the lady's finger. Okay, and you will find loculicidal, this is only loculicidal which you will find in Abilmoschus. If the fruit is not able to, does not split open, then you call that as dry indehiscent. Some of the examples are like Sepsilla, you will find in Tridax, and Caryopsis example is in Oryza, the rice you will find. So, and nuts, cashew nut and all, Anacardiaceae. And the third one is schizocarpic fruit. What is a schizocarpic fruit? It is a fruit which is intermediate between dehiscent and indehiscent fruit. Here the fruit, instead of dehiscing, splitting up into number of segments, each containing one or more seeds, then you call this as a schizocarpic. So the fruit, instead of dehiscing, break open, split open and then open, it splits into number of segments. Then you call this as schizocarpic. In this example is, we are very familiar with a fruit, what you call it as cremocarp, which you can find in coriander, and carculus you will find in leucus, and this is the example Lomentum, mimosa, and tamarind you will find, a leguminous fruit constricted between the seeds and forms a number of one-seeded compartments. And the last one is the regma, ricinus, the castor you will find. So one-seeded cocker you can find in this picture, it's getting split into. So this is the castor seed which you can find. Okay, this is the Lomentum. In mimosa also you will find. And the other kind of fruit, what you call it as an aggregate fruit. What is an aggregate fruit? The aggregate fruit is the one which has been developed into from a single flower and apocarpus pistil. Carpel is otherwise called as a pistil, and here it is apocarpus. What is apocarpus? We said that if they are free, you call it as apocarpus. So each of the free carpel develops into a simple fruitlet. So, and such kind of fruitlets makes an aggregate fruit. So example, annona and polyalthea. So here you can see the custard apple. This is an aggregate fruit. And the last one is what we call it as the multiple or composite fruit. A multiple or composite fruit is what? Which is the one which develops from the whole inflorescence, a group of flowers, and all the whole inflorescence, if it becomes into a fruit, then you call it as multiple fruit. And example, so roses or the jackfruit also you will find here. In this picture you can see that multiple or composite fruit. This is the ficus and this is the jackfruit which we will have. You will find this is the bag, what we call it as a perianth, which is the edible part, and these are the stigmas which are there, the tough rinds. And such kind of fruit is called as a multiple fruit or a composite fruit. So very quickly we will go through this flow chart. A fruit, simple fruit, aggregate fruit, and then multiple fruit. In simple fruits, depending upon the nature of the pericarp, either they may be fleshy fruits or dry fruits. In fleshy fruits we have seen berry, tomato, drupe, mango, peppo, cucumber, hesperidium, orange, pome, apple, balusta is pomegranate. In dry fruits, we said whether they split open or not. Based on that, we call it as dry dehiscent if it splits open. If it doesn't, we call it as indehiscent. A combination of two, when it splits, then you call it as schizocarpic. This is open, it opens up, but whereas it splits only. Then in this dry dehiscent, we can find follicle, calotropis, legume, which we can find in pisum, siliqua brassica, silicula capsula, and in this capsule we have septicidal, loculicidal and poricidal. This is linum, example lady's finger and papaver. Then when it comes to indehiscent, achene, clematis, cypsilla, tridax, caryopsis oryza, nut, anacardium, samara and a trichule. And if it splits open, then into many segments, cremocarp, which you will find in coriander, coriandrum, and Carcillus leucus, Lomentum, mimosa or tamarind, regma is ricinus. So these are various types of fruit. Now, what are the edible parts of the fruit, what we eat? Now, so here berry, example common names, that is the tomato, brinjal and guava. And these are the botanical names, Lycopersicum esculentum, and brinjal is called as Solanum melangina, and guava is called as Cydium gujava, and mango, Mangifera indica, and coconut, Cocos nucifer. What are the edible parts? Tomato, the edible part, the whole fruit has been eaten. And in brinjal also it's a tender fruit. Guava, the whole fruit. And in mango, the middle portion is only the fleshy part. Okay, so it is the only the mesocarp, and in coconut you will find endosperm. Either it may be cellular or liquid. That is, the liquid is the tender coconut what we drink, it may be the cellular, and then dates, it is Phonix dactylifera, it is the pericarp what we eat is the edible part. And pepo, already we said it is the cucumber example, and here the botanical name is Cucumis sativus, the whole fruit is the edible part. And Hesperidium, orange or lemon, Citrus sinensis, and the edible part is the juicy hairs on the endocarp. Pome, apple, Pyrus malis is the botanical name, and the part which we eat is the thalamus. That's why we call it as a false fruit, we call it as. And baluster is the pomegranate. Punica granatum, the succulent tester of the seeds is the edible part. And legume, we all know that it is the pea, and Pisum sativum is the name, and the seed is the edible part. And here we will talk about poppy seeds. Poricidal capsule, poppy Papaver somniferum, it is the seeds. Loculicidal capsule, lady's finger, Abelmoschus esculentus, tender fruit. And sunflower, Helianthus anus, the seed. Maize, paddy is Oryza sativa, the seed. Cashew nut, it is the false fruit again here. It is the pedicel is the false fruit, and the cotyledons are the true fruit. And coriander. And touch me not plant, Mimosa pudica, the fruit is called as Lomentum. It is the seed. And aggregate fruit is the custard apple, where we were talking about Apocarpus pistil, which will develop into. Botanical name is Annona squamous. The pericarp is the part. And in composite fruit, we have said Sorosus, jackfruit, pineapple and mulberry are the examples of it. And jackfruit, the botanical name is Artocarpus heterophyllus. And what is the edible part we are eating? The perianth is the edible part, the seed is also cooked and eaten. And pineapple, it is Ananas commosis, it is perianth or the rachis is the edible part which we take. Mulberry, Morus alba, and it is the whole fruit. And the Syconus is the fig, Ficus carica, this is the whole inflorescence. So, when we talk about the fruit, there are various kinds of fruits, and the edible part of the fruit varies from one fruit to another. In the next class, we will talk about the seed.